Hello APG Nation and welcome to my review of Hotline Miami 2 Wrong Number. This is the type of game in which the goal is very simple. Kill everyone as fast and as deadly as you can, going from room to room with various different types of firearms and more up close personal weapons, and when all is said and done, you simply have to walk back to your car and just admire the bodies and blood you left behind. The story of Hotline Miami 2 picks up after the previous events in the first game and not only continues the story forward, but also brings it backwards in time before the first game to explain what was going on with the other characters before the protagonist went on his killing spree. And even though there is now more of a story in the game, it can be prone to not being as interesting as I hoped it would have been, and with all the different characters it leaves me wanting more, as some characters are just more interesting than others. But then again, who really plays Hotline Miami 2 just for the narrative? At its core, the gameplay of Hotline Miami 2 is very similar to the first game and still is as easy to control, with the player being able to swiftly control their character from corner to corner as they shoot, stab, swing and throw weapons at their enemies, and if the player was to just make one single mistake, well, get ready for a quick death and then a restart. But that doesn't actually mean a complete failure, because one of the more fun parts to this game is actually getting down your own technique, remembering enemy placements and map layouts, all to try and get the best score possible. And also a new element of the game is also that of different characters which the player can play as. And at the start I actually thought this was going to be a positive element which I'll be able to talk about in this review, but sadly it really isn't. The game feels much more linear, as during each mission you now play as a different character, and due to this, the game makes you play a certain way and try and adopt new tactics, but sadly this moves away from what made the first game great. And now the player has to more or less play the way the developers wanted you to play, and not really the other way around. There are also a few other problems, such as maps being way too big for my liking, which just ends up making levels just last longer, and all the damn time, enemies off screen would just end up killing you without you realizing where they came from. And not to forget that enemies still get confused by doors, and still don't seem to care or notice when the player kills one of their own team. Now that's pretty dumb AI. But overall, the gameplay, it's good, it's fast, super violent, and when everything goes off without a hitch, it feels great. But with the different characters constantly changing gameplay, the silly bugs that existed in the first game, and just the increase in level size and unfair difficulty at times, the gameplay does take a hit. However, what certainly does work is sound design and graphics, and if you knew anything about the first game, then you have probably guessed that this would be great, and it is. The Miami underworld is brought to a sort of trippy pixelated art style which was seen in the first game, and it really does set the good atmosphere that the game deserves. It's a bloody yet dreamlike state. It's cool and stylish, and the various sounds of gunfire and weapons crushing heads just gives the game a nice pop and bang when dispatching enemies, and let's not forget that thumping 80s electronic dance soundtrack, which is just bloody awesome and just adds to the game's already good atmosphere. But ultimately, I feel like Hotline Miami 2 is a bit messy when it comes to serving as a solid sequel. Sure, it feels like a Hotline Miami game, but not one that has improved all too much. The majority of his levels are nicely created but go on for too long. The gameplay is great and familiar with some characters, but with others it just struggles to hold up against the first game. But when you're knee deep in bodies and you've got that perfect chain kill, and the music is going, well, the game can feel like it's right back where it belongs, and only then does it feel great. But overall, Hotline Miami 2 is just always starting and stopping, and with the problems that I experienced, the game is really only worth it on sale. If you own the first game, then stick to that until you can snatch this game for a decent price. But for all your things gaming news and reviews, keep your eyes on apgnation.com.